Date, March 5th, 2019. Roman had so many prank ideas in mind for the other sides, but for his first one, he was going to start simple. It was 4 a.m, and no one was awake yet, so he had a devious idea. Stepping into Patton's room, he took the glasses from his bedside table as quietly as he could and replaced them with Logan's. Silently slipping from the room, he returned to the one that belonged to his analytical counterpart. Setting Morality's glasses in place of the normal pair, he swiftly made his way back to his own room, waiting to see the outcome of his switch. Patton stretched out an arm to cut off his alarm. As soon as the beeping stopped, his hand went to his spectacles, which he quickly placed on the bridge of his nose. Blinking, he wondered if he had failed to notice that his eyesight was slowly worsening over time, or if it was as sudden as it seemed. Shaking his head, he got to his feet to get dressed, and to make sure breakfast was hot and ready when the others awoke. More than once, he barely avoided dropping something, or burning himself, from his poor vision throwing off his depth perception. Still, he managed to get breakfast on the table by the time the others made their way into the dining room.
Good morning. Did you all sleep well?
Virgil sighed as he sipped his coffee.
No, but that's pretty normal for me.
Princey seemed as energetic as ever.
I, for one, slept great.
He didn't know why he glanced around. Habit, perhaps. But even without his sight, he could tell that logic was present. He was just being abnormally quiet.
How about you, Logan?
I feel adequately rested.
His words were quickly followed by the clatter of silverware falling from the table. After a moment of silence, Anxiety's voice filled the air.
Hey, Lo. You feeling okay?
I'm sure I don't know what you mean.
The darker trait huffed.
Look at me, Specs.
He must have obliged.
You're not looking at me. You're looking at something between us. Are you sure you're feeling all right?
It was the worried comments that brought the father figures to his senses. His sight hadn't worsened, he just had the wrong glasses. Before he could say anything, however, the academic fired back at his negative counterpart.
As I said before, I am perfectly fine.
Not letting him go any further, the moral aspect took the glasses that his friend was wearing.
What are you doing?
A moment later, he handed over the spectacles that he had been wearing all morning, and placed the pair he had just taken on the bridge of his nose, and just like magic, his vision returned.
Haha, who switched our glasses?
The teacher blinked a few times, as his own sight was restored.
I too would like to know which one of you pulled this off.
The fight-or-flight reflex stared at the whimsical facet over his coffee.
It wasn't me. I know that taking away your ability to see could result in injury.
He took a sip of his drink.
Which is against the rules.
The sole purpose of the prank was not injury, so I didn't break.
He stopped at the looks the others gave him.
And I just gave away that it was my prank, didn't I?
Nice one, Sir Sang-a-Lot.
The youngest character glanced over to him.
What I want to know is how you managed to make breakfast with limited vision.
He shrugged.
It was a little more difficult than normal, but I guess I'm so used to it that I can make breakfast with my eyes closed.
Virgil actually gave him a smile.
I guess so, because my coffee is perfect as always.
Date, March 10th, 2019. Logan wasn't necessarily one for larger scale jokes, but he had agreed to help Patton entrap their colleagues on the second floor of the minescape. He felt as if the skin on his fingers was being ripped away as they placed the last strips of duct tape on the new wall of the sticky material, which resided at the base of the stairs.
This is as good as it's going to get without putting up an actual wall.
Morality giggled.
It'll be fun to listen to them try and find a way to get through this.
Virgil woke with a start from a harsh banging at his door. Jumping to his feet, he walked over and found Roman.
What do you want?
We are trapped!
He glanced around the corridor to see nothing unchanged.
What is your definition of trapped?
The prince rolled his eyes.
Try taking a look at the stairs.
Deciding to play along, he moved away from his room and glanced down the steps, only to see what looked like a gray wall.
What the heck?
He made his way down to it, only to have his hand get stuck briefly when he touched it. Looking between the posts of the railing, he could see the kind side laughing so hard he wasn't making any noise, and even logic had cracked a smile.
A duct tape wall. Real classy, guys.
He walked back up to where his enemy-turned-friend was still staring in disbelief at the newly made wall.
How exactly are we going to get past that?
We'll cut it down.
Good luck with that.
Anxiety whipped around at the sound of the academic's voice.
We took Roman's sword, along with all the scissors and sharp objects from the second floor.
No one asked you, Specs.
He turned and spoke, to where only his fellow prisoner could hear.
We could knock it down.
The fanciful trait scoffed.
How? We can't get a running start.
He closed his eyes, expecting to see the common room when they opened again, but he was greeted with the same sights as when he closed them. He shouted to the ones on the ground floor.
You took away my ability to teleport?
Finally, the father figure spoke up.
You're not getting out that easily.
It was in that moment that he felt panic beginning to build in his chest, feeling as if the walls were closing in around him. He all but fell down the stairs as he felt a hand on his shoulders, but thankfully the same hand pulled him back.
Virg, you okay?
His breath was quick and raspy.
I can't be trapped.
The walls seemed to expand again as he noticed fingers in front of his face, snapping repeatedly, and he jolted around to face the whimsical aspect.
It's just duct tape. We'll get out.
It was another 10 minutes before he was able to fully gain his composure again, and even when he did, his main goal was still to find a way out. His companion was going through the rooms trying to find a pair of scissors that the other two might have missed, when the fight-or-flight reflex noticed a crucial detail. A large beanbag had been left at the base of the steps, more than likely from where the other two were completing the bottom of the duct tape wall. He knew he couldn't get a running start to slam through the wall, but there was another way to gain momentum. It was risky, especially since he couldn't calculate it all like Logan, and he knew Roman wouldn't do it, so he waited until he had entered another room. At which point, Virgil started at the far end of the corridor and got a running start. He barely heard his colleague's voice crying out in horror as he pitched himself off the top of the stairs. The air whistled past his ears before his right shoulder contacted the makeshift wall. The duct tape wrapped around him under the force of the impact, but his calculations had been correct, as a moment later he fell into the plush beanbag. The voices of the other two sounded blindsided as they realized their plan had been foiled, but they didn't know how yet. Pulling away some of the tape, he realized how disoriented he was from the fall, as he saw two Princes darting down the steps.
What the hell? You could have died!
Patton's worried tone joined the fray.
Died? What happened?
I don't know what came over him to do this, but to get past your wall, Virgil intentionally threw himself down the stairs!
Apparently his claim grabbed the attention of the others, as the youngest Facet soon felt them trying to untangle him from the sticky cocoon. They slowly got him out, and the eldest character pulled him into his arms.
Why would you do that?
He tried to straighten his vision.
To get through the wall that was
He pointed to the stairs.
right there.
Soon, logic was by his side, and though he was still disoriented, he guessed his friend was checking his vitals, which was confirmed when he spoke.
By the looks of it, the tape hit his ear, throwing off his balance and concentration. But he should be fine in a few minutes.
He glanced at the one who had made the claim.
Can I take a nap until the world stops spinning?
His answer was given from the others helping him lay back on the beanbag, where he kept his eyes closed until his brain caught up with his body. Finally, he was able to sit up, though the mat of tape remained stuck to him.
I think I'm back to normal now. Can someone help me get this tape off?
Once he was free, the creative attribute rounded on him.
Why did you think throwing yourself down the stairs was the best way to solve that situation?
Well, we couldn't exactly get a running start to get through the wall any other way.
He sighed.
Tell me this, then. Was it worth it?
Anxiety shrugged.
We got out, didn't we?
That's not what I meant. Given a little more time, we could have found another way out. So, was it worth it?
When he shrugged again, the prince scoffed.
You only feel that way because you didn't get a lasting injury from it.
He glared at the other.
I'm not saying it was fun, nor would I do it again unless I had to.
Date: March 12th, 2019. Logan had spent quite a few days drawing up, calculating, and finalizing the schematics for his newest practical joke. But now he was running into a problem. He needed help. He opened a document on his computer, going over the progression of pranks from the last week or so to determine which of his colleagues would make the best candidate for an ally. After a few moments, he realized that the one who had called the prank war to begin with had not pulled any new jokes since his initial introduction with the packing peanuts. Now certain that Virgil would make the best accomplice, he knew that the only issue would be gaining his trust after the duct tape door frame prank he had helped Patton with a few days prior. He just had to hope that his idea of having Roman as a potential target might prove itself to be so appealing that even anxiety would be unable to decline the opportunity. Having made his decision, he quickly closed the document on his computer and took a binder from his desk to go and speak with the person he intended to ally with. He could hear sounds echoing in response to his knocks before the darker side opened the door, peering into the corridor skeptically.
What's up, Specs?
Logic straightened his tie.
I have a proposition for you. Perhaps we could speak in the library to prevent the others from overhearing our conversation.
His friend wore a closed-off expression.
How do I know that you aren't trying to prank me?
He knew it was going to be difficult to convince the fight-or-flight reflex to join him, but he had an idea.
I require your assistance, so it would prove disadvantageous for me to play any sort of joke on you currently.
After one more wary glance, the worrisome trait stepped into the hall, ensuring that his door shut behind him.
Let's go ahead to the library, but I'm not agreeing to help you until I know just what this proposition of yours entails.
Leading the way to his favorite room, the intellectual allowed a brief smile to cross his features as they took their places in a pair of plush chairs across from the fireplace. He waited to speak until he had handed the binder to his darkly dressed companion.
This should provide many of the answers you are seeking. As you will see, however, the plan is quite elaborate, so I will require your assistance in its execution.
The one across from him opened the binder with care, as if expecting something to jump from its pages. Flipping through the pages, he seemed to lose some of his apprehension.
I have to admit, this has been well thought out.
He chuckled softly.
The mere idea of the others getting struck to the ground with a giant hand loaded with shaving cream would be hilarious. But I have a few questions. The first being, how do you intend on cleaning up the mess after the prank is over?
The analytical facet scoffed indignantly.
Of course it's well thought out. Who do you take me for? Our fanciful friend?
He thought for a moment, tapping his glasses a few times with his index finger.
I can just cast the same spell on the shaving cream that you did upon the packing peanuts. That would allow me to clean everything with a simple snap of my fingers.
The observant aspect was smiling now.
Fair enough. I'm in. That being said, we need to decide who our first target will be.
He paused momentarily.
As mean as it may sound, I was thinking Patton.
He gave the other an uneasy glance.
Are you certain? He may not take that well.
The only reason I suggest it is because of an idea I've had for Roman's turn.
He wasn't surprised that his colleague was more than happy to go after the whimsical character, but now he was curious as to what his plan was.
Could you elaborate?
Virgil chuckled.
If we could get him in the perfect position, I could ensure that Roman stays in place before getting a face full of shaving cream.
After a moment, his expression changed to a serious one.
How are we going to ensure that the others don't get hurt?
The academic reached for the binder, opening it to a tab that was helpfully labeled Target Safety.
I've thought about that as well, and my calculations from earlier determined just how much force the human body can take before broken bones are likely. The hand is going to be at least 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. To better disperse the force over the surface of the foam to decrease the probability of any injuries.
He wanted to continue pontificating about the different forces needed to break various bones, and the differences in acceleration rates that he had calculated, but came to an abrupt halt as he caught sight of the glazed-over expression that his ally now wore. Taking a deep breath, he simplified his explanation a great deal.
I have worked it out so that the hand is designed not to hurt anyone. Better?
Anxiety nodded slowly, a smile creeping onto his lips.
As long as we don't injure anyone, this could be fun.
His eyes drifted to the binder in Logan's hands.
I just had an idea. To lessen the blow that Patton will feel from being targeted first, we could use whipped cream instead of shaving cream to make the situation more fun for him. Then, to help him not feel so excluded, we could have him help us reload the hand with shaving cream for Roman.
The teacher cast an odd look in his direction.
You seem awfully contented with the idea of pranking Roman. May I ask why?
The darker persona leaned back in his chair, the look in his eyes reminiscent of his old ways.
I know that the two of us are on better terms with one another these days, which is why I specified in the rules that no grudges were to be held. That being said, this is a both fun and harmless way to get back at him for some past grievances.
Logic was beginning to catch on to some of the undertones of their current situation.
And knowing him, he probably sees this prank war of yours in a similar light.
Exactly. So there'll be no hard feelings.
The youngest embodiment glanced over to his companion.
So, how do we intend on getting both Patton and Roman to the backyard separately for the prank?
Well, Patton has a soft spot for Maya, so I was thinking that we could tell him that he could assist you in teaching her a new trick. It would be one that would have to take place outside, which in turn would coerce him to join us in the backyard.
He sighed.
As for Roman, I am uncertain.
The fight-or-flight reflex appeared thoughtful.
I might be able to help you there. Roman's been hounding me endlessly to join him for karaoke, so I could easily convince him that I'd set something up outside once the hand has been reloaded.
He chuckled once more.
Which would put me in the perfect position to keep him in position for the prank.
He nodded, unsure of what his negative counterpart had in mind.
With all of that planned out, all that is left is for me to construct the foam and hand and the mat on which they are to land.
He turned his attention to his watch briefly.
The construction process would take me the better part of a day, then the testing process would take approximately 6 to 8 hours. Which means if I were to begin working within the next hour, we could have the prank set in motion by noon on the 14th.
Works for me. But for the testing process, you're gonna need someone to test it on.
He took a deep breath.
And seeing as I'm your only ally, I guess I'm going to have to get slammed in the face a few times so we don't risk hurting the others.
The factual attribute blinked at him in surprise, momentarily speechless.
Yes, I suppose I would require some assistance in that regard. I would appreciate your help with that, Virgil.
The one in question glanced at the clock over the mantel.
No problem. Just let me know when you're ready to begin the tests. And try not to break my nose in the process.
I shall do my best.
Giving a small wave as a farewell to his accomplice, he headed out of the library, binder in hand, to begin work on their practical joke. Virgil was surprised to get a text from Logan so soon. Apparently his estimate for how long the construction of the hand would take wasn't quite right. Still, the sooner the hand was finished, the sooner the duo would be able to see their friends pranked with the contraption. Understanding that now meant he was going to have to partake in the testing process. He just hoped Logic's calculations were correct, and he wouldn't end up with a broken face. He hadn't said it, but the truth was, he had no idea what they were going to do with a giant foam hand once the joke was completed. Still, seeing as it was the intellectual's project, he would leave the aftermath up to him. Making sure the coast was clear, he made his way across the hall to his companion's room, preparing for what he was about to get himself into. When he walked in, he blinked in shock at what stood before him. It was a hand, but it was massive. It had to be at least 6 feet tall, and that wasn't accounting for any of the rigging or how high it was hoisted off the floor. It was clear that 5 poles made up the hand's skeleton, but layers of foam and padding added the muscle and flesh. He had no idea how heavy the thing was, but there was no doubt that it would be impossible to remain standing once hit by it. Apparently, the analytical side had come to the same conclusion, seeing as he had not only moved all of his furniture out the way, but he had put foam mats on both the floor and wall to keep anxiety safe during the testing process. Taking a deep breath, he simply turned to look at his ally, who pointed to a line of duct tape on the floor.
Unless otherwise instructed, be sure that you are behind that line for every test.
He moved over to the directed place.
Just try your best not to break my nose with this thing.
The academic rolled his eyes.
Honestly, do you really think that I didn't take such possibilities into account? If you stay behind that line, you shall remain unharmed.
The negative trait propped himself up on his arms, panting from the countless times he'd had the breath slammed from his lungs.
Remind me again why I agreed to do this?
The other ignored his question.
Other than being winded, have you sustained any injuries from the 16th test?
He awkwardly clambered to his feet, checking his body for any pain. The truth was, the teacher had done well in building the giant hand and making the mat to land on, as he was yet to be injured in any way. However, the process of being thrown across the room 16 times had left him a tad disoriented.
I'm fine. Just a bit dizzy.
The rational aspect nodded.
That much is to be expected, seeing as the device is only meant to be used on a person once. Your disorientation is coming from the fluid in your ears being mixed from the multiple impacts and landing. Thankfully for you, though, that was the last test.
He ran his hands down his face, trying to keep the world from spinning.
Great. Can we wait to pull this prank until I'm not seeing double anymore?
Date, March 14th, 2019. Both Virgil and Logan had spent the hours leading up to dawn, setting up and running final checks on their contraption. Walking back inside, they closed the blinds to the back door, concealing their plot until it would be ready that afternoon. The sides often stayed inside during the day, so it was highly unlikely that anyone would accidentally stumble across the colossal hand. The two who were in on the upcoming joke did well in concealing it, as the first part of their day went on as normal. Still, as the time drew closer, both Patton and Roman returned to their rooms for a while, leaving the others to finish setting up their prank. It took about 15 minutes, but they managed to empty about 30 containers of whipped cream onto the foam hand Logic had created. Surprisingly getting very little on themselves, with the prank now ready, Anxiety stepped onto the wooden platform which would be hoisted into the air by a forklift, ready to push the hand into their first victim. Both of the pranksters had made a point to have walkie-talkies so they could hear the conversation the others were having. Once the youngest side was in place, the analytical trait swiftly made his way back inside to retrieve their friend. There was a brief moment of silence before the device in his jacket pocket sounded.
Hey kiddo, what's up?
Apparently, Morality had answered his door, leading to a quick response.
Virgil is currently in the backyard, and he requested that I ask if you would be willing to assist him in teaching Amaya a new agility trick.
Of course.
The words were swiftly followed by the soft sound of a door closing. A second later, the voice of the teacher came through the communicator again.
Virgil wants a new agility course to be a surprise, so he asked me to blindfold you as well.
When the eldest aspect readily agreed, he felt a flash of guilt run down his spine. Their companion was so trusting, and they were about to betray that trust. He didn't have time to ponder his feelings as the door opened and Logan stepped out, guiding Patton, who now had one of the towels they would use to clean themselves off draped over his head.
Can I look now?
You can look in 3, 2, 1.
Just as his accomplice said the last word, he took the towel off, and the negative character pushed the hand over the side. Its momentum almost pulled him off the platform, but he managed to right himself just as the mixture of foam and whipped cream knocked the kind facet from his feet. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, and he worried that even with all of the calculations and testing, that they had managed to hurt their colleague. After a second, laughter filled the air as the father figure sat up, wiping the white fluff from his eyes, sending a wave of relief through him.
Is this whipped cream?
When the two perpetrators nodded, the one in question ran his fingers across his face before beginning to eat the whipped cream that he had just been assaulted with. Helping him off the platform, Logan turned back to his emotional counterpart, clearly shocked by how well he had taken the joke.
Would you be willing to help us load the hand with shaving cream so we can prick Roman as well?
Sure.
As he said the word, he retrieved one of the canisters from a box off to the side and began reloading the hand. It was another 15 minutes before they were ready to pull the prank again, but this time it would be Logic up on the platform. Swiftly, Virgil made his way inside with the other towel, ensuring that he didn't have any whipped or shaving cream on him as he headed to get their next victim. Knocking on the door, it was quickly opened to him.
What's up, Hot Topic?
Patton, Logan, and I have a surprise for you in the backyard.
Princey appeared skeptical.
This is a prank. I can feel it.
Anxiety rolled his eyes, trying to act normal.
Honestly, it's not. It's a surprise.
I don't believe you.
He sighed, lowering his tone as if someone were listening.
Okay, just don't let the others know I told you this, because this was supposed to be a surprise. But we finally got a karaoke machine and wanted you to join us.
His mission was a success as his friend joined them in the corridor with wide eyes.
Why didn't you say so? Let's go.
Hold on.
He caught up with the whimsical attribute at the top of the stairs.
To help the others believe that I didn't tell you what's going on, let me blindfold you.
He received a wary glance.
And you promised there is a karaoke machine in the backyard.
I promise.
As he said the words, his companion missed him crossing his fingers behind his back. Still, he allowed the younger side to place the towel over his head and guide him through the mindscape. Once through the door, he cast his gaze up to Logan, mouthing a few words.
I'm going to let him see the surprise a little early.
He glanced back to the prince.
Okay, you can see the surprise in 3, 2,
He removed the blindfold.
1.
His friend tried to scramble away from the oncoming hand, but Virgil had taken hold of the back of Roman's neck and actually pushed him forward into the foam. Sure, the darker attribute managed to get some of the white fluff on his arm in the process, but it was clear that he had gotten off far easier than his colleague. He lay on the foam mats, almost unrecognizable beneath the mix of whipped and shaving cream, and his hands were so covered that he couldn't even clear his eyes. Logic quickly jumped down from the platform.
You didn't tell me that you were going to push him into it. That's added force that I didn't count for.
It wasn't until the words were spoken that Anxiety realized what he had done. Patton, who was still mostly covered in fluff, himself gave Princey one of the towels. As the shaving cream was wiped away, it became very apparent that one of the metal rods which made the hand's skeleton had hit his bottom lip, promptly splitting it. He rushed to his friend's side, realizing he had broken one of his own rules.
You okay, Sir Sing-A-Lot?
He was quiet as he wiped away some of the shaving cream and blood, quickly looking up at him.
I will be, but per your rules, you owe me an apology.
Virgil glanced at the giant hand.
The prank was actually Logan's, but seeing as I pushed you into it, I am sorry you got hurt, Roman.
He hadn't realized how difficult it would be for him to say the words, but the thought was dashed as he met the gaze of the fanciful trait.
Apology accepted. But you two better watch out, because I will be going easy on you after this.
Date, March 17th, 2019. Roman knew exactly who his target was going to be, and unlike Logan, he wasn't going to try and prank all of them, just Virgil. He had somehow managed to rig 2 buckets to dump their contents onto the person who stepped under them by pulling a rope that he had run back to his own room. The trick was elaborate for him, but it would serve its purpose, especially considering that the sides would soon be going to film a video with Thomas. Waiting in his place with the door just barely open, he waited in silence for his moment. Both Logan and Patton had already gone downstairs, but his victim was yet to join them. After a few seconds, he heard the creak of a door and saw the familiar pattern of a certain trait's black and purple jacket. Pulling the rope, the first bucket dumped craft glue all over Anxiety, who did exactly as he'd hoped, and moved back ever so slightly from the shock, where the second bucket tipped, covering him in bright pink and silver glitter.
What the fuck?
The now sparkly aspect never finished his statement, as he fell into a coughing fit from inhaling some of the glitter. He was about to jump out when he heard footfall on the stairs. A moment later, both Morality and Logic stepped into view, but stayed well away from the mess. For a brief moment, both of them, didn't seem to realize who was standing before them, but as soon as they did, they both started laughing.
Was this you two?
The father figure giggled.
Not me, but now you're shiny.
The youngest facet glared at him.
Is now really the time for Moana lyrics?
I would not play a prank like this, because that means I would have to vacuum up all of the glitter.
Princey flinched at the words. Why hadn't he thought of that? He should have cast a spell on the glitter, the same way Virgil had with the packing peanuts. But it was too late now. He was never going to clean all that up. The one who had been pranked didn't seem too intent on finding the culprit. Instead, he looked down at himself.
How the hell am I supposed to show up in a video looking like a disco ball?
You can try and wash it off before the
The eldest side was unable to finish his sentence before the familiar tugging sensation indicated that their host wanted their attention. The voice of the negative character cracked with panic.
We don't have time!
He glanced back into his room.
I'm gonna go take a shower. Do the video without me.
Patton shook his head empathetically.
We can't do a video without you.
He stepped back towards his room.
Logan and Roman did a video without us a few months ago. What's the difference?
In that situation, we were both out of the video. Besides, we were still in the end card.
His jaw moved ever so slightly, and the fight-or-flight reflex suddenly turned towards him as if he had heard him.
Roman, what have you done? And how exactly am I supposed to show up for the video?
How should I know?
As he spoke, he stepped out of his room, which proved to be a mistake. He had forgotten how fast his counterpart could be, and like a weeping angel, in the blink of an eye, he had the prince pinned to the floor. For a moment he feared the other may strike him, but he stood with the same speed and seemed contented.
It looks like your shining prank has backfired.
As he scrambled to his hands, he saw pink glitter rain from his own hair, and felt the stickiness of glue on his hands. Of course, anxiety hadn't been trying to hurt him. Instead, by tackling him, he had covered him in nearly as much glue and sparkles.
If I have to go to this video looking like a kindergartner's craft project, so do you.
Virgil held the gaze of his colleague as he forcibly teleported all four of them into the real world. His friend was visibly offended, but he didn't have time to consider it before Thomas spoke.
Hey guys, what the heck happened to you two?
His gaze flickered between himself and the creative attribute.
Roman decided to dump glue and glitter all over me, so I took a page from Patton's book and tackle-hugged him. Vengeance is sweet.
Their host turned to face Princey.
So, why exactly did you cover Virgil in glitter?
Well, we're in the middle of a...
If we tell you, you have to join in.
He swiftly cut logic off, enacting a rule he had come up with after pondering whether or not Thomas would ever notice their pranks. The online personality gazed at all of them skeptically, but the darker character didn't miss the smirk he wore.
I'm not covered in pink glitter because I want to be. So, do you want to join or not?
He took a deep breath.
If it will get me an explanation as to why you two have been doused in sparkles, I'll join.
Something told him that the YouTuber had no idea what he was getting himself into, but he was in it now.
Before I explain what happened to me and Princey, I'll say this. Welcome to the prank war.
Prank war. Wait, what?
They all chuckled at Thomas's look of horror, and one by one took turns explaining the rules, reasons, and intentions of the prank war. Finally, anxiety met his gaze.
That all being said, you are required to participate, and anyone else who is told about the prank war is also required to participate.
He smiled lightly.
So you might as well go ahead and tell Joan and Talyn.
Wait, why?
Judging by how immense our jokes have been so far, I seriously doubt you're going to be able to take part in all of this without them knowing. Besides, they're smart and creative. They would make good allies.
Their host glanced between them all.
You can have allies.
Logan sounded confident.
Yes. Patton and I are currently in an alliance,
He glanced at the others.
so you might want to watch out.
The imaginative side whipped around to face him.
I'll cover you in glitter just like I did Virgil.
Speaking of which, I'm gonna duck out of this video and go take a shower because I'm tired of looking like a disco ball.
No one had protested his leaving, and judging by what he heard from the corridor, the video was going to majorly feature logic and morality, since Princey had returned to get the glitter off of himself as well. Once he had dried his hair and gotten dressed in his older outfit so he could wash the craft supplies from his newer one, he pushed his door open with one foot to ensure that nothing else would come raining down on him. Heading for the laundry room, he noticed his colleague stepping out of his own room.
Hey, Virg, wait up!
He chuckled as he turned.
Have we gone back in time?
As he ran up, the fanciful trait seemed to realize that they were both dressed in their older outfits.
Sure looks like it, but that's not what I wanted to talk to you about.
He merely cast a confused glance at his friend before he continued.
How would you feel about an alliance?
The fight-or-flight reflex stopped.
You just want to ally with me so I won't get you back for the glitter thing.
Didn't you already get me back by tackling me?
The prince apparently came to the conclusion that being tackled was not his form of revenge.
Okay, maybe not, but at least hear me out.
Why not? I'm curious to see how you pitch this idea to me.
He waited until they started the washer before explaining the possible alliance.
Look, you proved during the duct tape prank that you can be pretty ruthless. I don't know anyone else who would have pitched themselves down the stairs to get through that like you did.
He glanced at the floor.
You're willing to pull off almost anything. And that, combined with my ideas for pranks, could make us an unstoppable team.
The youngest aspect had to admit that he was shocked by the poignant observation. Still, he wasn't convinced.
I'm not saying that I'm unwilling to form an alliance, but there is more to it than just working together. If one of us pranks the other during the alliance, it could not only break our trust in one another, but it would go from a Mind Palace prank war to the two of us trying to kill each other.
The whimsical facet nodded.
So to make an alliance, we would also have to make a truce?
Right.
He glanced back at the common room to make sure the others had not yet returned.
To ally with me, you have to promise not to try and pull pranks on me during the alliance. Equally, I have to make the same promise to you. That being said, are you still willing to form an alliance?
I think I can handle a truce.
He held out his hand.
Creative?
Virgil shook his hand.
And ruthless. I think you're right. We are going to be a force to be reckoned with.